It all started when my mom met my dad and they made me. Hi, I'm Ryan. Just kidding. I'm Liv. Hi. Okay, so a lot of you asked about my resume and I'm truly going to try to sum it up, but there's like so much to it. So my resume kind of starts when I was 5 years old. My mom was a waitress and she usually did not have childcare. So she would take me to be like in the kitchen and backstage at the places where she was a waitress. And one of those places was a comedy club, the Birmingham Comedy Club. And I would sit backstage and just kind of like chat with people. And one time there was a comedian who was talking about being heckled. And I was like, oh, what's that? And he was like, well, they basically make fun of me. And then I said, well, what's the thing that they say to you? And like the most. And he told me, and then I gave him like a comeback and he was like, that's pretty funny, kid. And he gave me $1. And I was like, oh my God, you've created a monster. So then I would sit during my mom's shift in the backstage and sell hecklers comebacks for $5 a piece. And the comedians loved me. They just thought I was really funny. I was like a little mobster in the back, like, hey kid, you got $1? You have people making fun of you. I can tell you what to say. Like, it was so weird, but it kind of worked out for me. I made a little money for Christmas that year, whatever. So I really liked being backstage. And my mom had a lot of friends who were musicians. Even though we lived in Alabama, she had a lot of connections. She actually kind of dated one of the guys in Metallica. And so we went on tour with Metallica for like a very short amount of time. So I was always kind of around famous people, but I didn't like acknowledge them as famous people, I guess. I also started cooking when I was really young because my mom was a terrible cook. She burned everything and said it was blackened. Terrible. So I was cooking, I think from the time I was like 8 or 9 years old. And it made me think, like, after spending all that time in restaurants and in nightclubs, like, this is where the money is. Those clubs are always open. Restaurants are always open. People always need food. So I should go to culinary school. And I actually got accepted with a full ride to the Cordon Bleu and some other schools, but I wanted to go while I was still in high school because it was an option for me. And so I could graduate culinary school and high school at the same time and just start my career. So that's what I did. So I went to a VOTEC program instead of going to probably a more prestigious school. And then I was living in Orlando at the time. And this is me. I was a punk rocker and I liked to go to shows, put on shows. I was every weekend at a show of some kind or helping to organize like local DIY shows. So that also was just really fun to me. So right before I turned 18, I graduated high school and culinary school at the same time. But one of my professors at culinary school, his mentor, had just taken over as one of the VPs at Universal Studios. And he had been coming into class, like talking to us to mentor us. And he just took a liking to me. He saw how ambitious I was. And he said, look, I'm about to take this huge project undertaking at Universal Studios where they were opening Islands of Adventure and City Walk, the first ever. And he had to open 12 to 13 restaurants that were themed and needed just like a right-hand man. And so he asked me to be that right-hand man. So I helped him go through the park as it was a new park and just set up all of these crazy little themed restaurants all throughout the park. And I worked on pretty much every restaurant in the beginning phases of City Walk to help them figure out menus and like where sinks should go for hand washing, things like that. And that was like a big part of my resume because I opened 13 restaurants right out the gate, one after another for a major corporation who just loved me and gave me, great references. So that was a very big deal for my career. And that's where I spent the 4 years after high school and culinary school. So I kind of call it my college years because it kind of was. And after all of the restaurants were open, I ended up being like anchored at Margaritaville because I just liked the staff there. I loved Jimmy. I loved the food. I just kind of liked it all. And it was cool to open a park like that. One of the coolest things though was that they had staff only months before the park opened, which is probably just us being guinea pigs. I mean, honestly, but there were months where we just got to go into the park and like hop on a roller coaster and then go start your shift. Like it was very fun because there was only celebrities and staff there for, I feel like the first like 3 months. And as fun as this was, I had big dreams to move to New York and open a restaurant of my own. So that's what I was going to do. So summer of 2001, I pack up all my bags and I decide I'm moving to New York. Then September 2001 happened. I still plan on moving to New York, but I need to rethink some things. So to save money, I decided to take a live-in nannying job out on Long Island so I can just like squirrel away money and then go into the city on the weekend and check places out and look for apartments, things like that. So I'm living in Long Island for about 6 months as a nanny, and then the family decides to fire me, but they're like very awkward about it because I was a live-in. So they waited till I left the house and they were like, okay, we're firing you. You have to find a new place to live. So I like scrambled to find a new place to live, and that's how I accidentally moved in with Dashboard Confessional, but that's like a whole other story. So now I'm living in Brooklyn and I need a job. I find a job on the Lower East Side at this little sandwich shop. And then I just kind of start like looking around at places just to kind of see what's out there. And then one day I'm walking over by Arlene's Grocery and I hear this like man rustling around in this weird little room, like in the side of this building across from Arlene's Grocery. And I go over and I just kind of like start making small talk with him. Next thing I know, I'm telling the guy, hey, I don't know what this space is that you're cleaning out, but clean it out and rent it to me for like $400 a month and I'll turn it into a restaurant. So I did. So now I've opened like 13 restaurants for a major corporation and one restaurant for myself, and I'm 21 years old. And at Arlene's Groceries, there are bands playing, there's videos being filmed, like REM filmed a music video there when I was working across the street. So it was a great place to like meet people. And somehow one of the people who owns the Gramercy Park Hotel got their hands on my resume and called me literally every day until I helped to revitalize the Gramercy Park Hotel. And then I worked at the Gramercy Park Hotel for about a year. That place was also very, very haunted. And then a woman who owned a lot of businesses on the Lower East Side approached me and said she had a lease that I could basically rent from her with a liquor license. So I opened my second restaurant in New York, Cafe Juanita, which unfortunately I don't have pictures of, but it is in the movie Across the Universe because they paid us to close for 2 weeks so they could paint the outside. But fun fact, I hate the Beatles, so I'll probably never see that movie. And at this point, I am 23 years old, and the restaurant is very popular. There are a lot of musicians in the area, chefs and actors who come in regularly to the restaurant and love the food, love the staff. It was such a great place at the time, but my business partner was super shady. She sold my liquor license out from under me because New York City stopped selling liquor licenses during that time, so she made a mint, and then she sold the restaurant out from under me. So from there, I was kind of burnt out on running restaurants, and I wanted to work more in nightlife. I started bartending, and then I walked down the street to where Jimmy Fallon had just opened his club, Mo Pickens, and I was like, hey, I really want to work here. And they were like, wow, we need a stage manager. So they looked at my resume and they hired me on as a stage manager. I worked there for about a year, and then there was a new club that had just opened up closer to my house, and I wanted to work there, and it was called Union Hall, and they made up a job for me working as the assistant to the booker, which turned into the stage manager. And I did that for like 2 or 3 years, and then management got weird, and I just kind of got done with the bureaucracy there, and so I left. And I didn't know what I was going to do next, but a friend of mine had just started working with rock and roll summer camp for kids in Los Angeles. So she was like, just come do this for the summer and see what you think. So I did, and I went out to LA, and then the summer camp was like for kids, but it also worked with large bands. So I was working with like TV on the radio and other bands, like punk bands that I liked, setting them up with these kids to like record videos and albums together. It was really cute. So I did that for a summer, and then I was just like, I think I want to live in LA. The girl I was living with at the time, who was my best friend, we moved to LA together. And then I was like, well, I don't want to be an actor. I'm not like trying to be a chef right now. I don't know what I really want to do. So I just started working in venues. I worked at the Roxy, the Echo, and the Comedy Store. Wait, going back to New York for just a second. So I worked as a bartender, as a restaurateur, as all these things, but New York is one of the most expensive cities in the world. And I just had a lot of opportunities to do cool things, and I'm cool around celebrities. So people would hire me to do all kinds of things just because I take direction well. I have a lot of talents, and I'm just cool to be around, I guess. So I would do things like styling, DJing, bartending, parties for celebrities, things like that, just because it was like word of mouth. And then in LA, I was mostly a box office girl working box office stage management at like all the major venues that anything cool was happening. So I got to know a lot of cool people, a lot of cool acts, and that was like fun for the time. But I wanted to do something that was more of my own. And then I moved to Portland. Jazz Cabbage became legal. I started working in Dispos as an educator, learned as much as I could. And then parlayed all of that into working the way I do now. And then I got asked to be on TV a couple times doing that. And then I think that kind of catches you up. But I also was the first person to bring Time's Up to the industry. So I'm well known like in circles in Schmannabis because of that also. So there's more, but that's as much as I can fit into 10 minutes.